Yeah, already? Yeah. 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 Ready. Call the Board of Examiners to order. For the record, I am here. General Wasden is on via Zoom, and the governor will not be with us today. Mr. Secretary.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, Attorney General. Good to see you. Today on our Board of Examiners agenda, we have our consent agenda, where there's 6 items. We have the approval of the minutes for our meeting from last month on March 16th. Item number 2 is from the Department of Agriculture. It's a request for approval of deficiency warrant spending authority for 3 different pests and disease controls. Authorization is requested for fiscal year 22. Item number 3 is from the Department of Health and Welfare. This is their quarterly request. It's an approved transfer of $139,105,600 to be transferred from the general fund to the cooperative welfare fund during the 4th quarter. Item number 4 is from the Idaho State Police. It's a request for a waiver to the Board of Examiners surplus personal property policy and procedure to transfer a drug detection canine named Bingo to the handler, Trooper Tyler Sherman. I didn't think I would say bingo today, but I guess I did. Item number 5 is from the Department of Administration. This is the contract assignment. And item number 6 is from the Division of Veteran Services, is also a contract assignment. And that is our consent agenda for today.
Mr. Chairman,
General Wasden.
I move adoption and approval of the consent agenda.
And I will second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and the consent agenda is approved.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Attorney General. On our informational agenda, we have 2 items from my office to share with you. One is a report of overtime paid on FLSA exempt employees during the COVID response. Item B, just to quickly update you, Senate Bill 1027, which has just passed this session, is the Idaho Wrongful Conviction Act. This created in Idaho Code Section 6, Chapter 3505, created the Innocence Fund in the State Treasury, from which claims adjudicated under the Act may be paid. The Innocence Fund has been appropriated money from the legislature, which is continuously appropriated for carrying out the provisions of this Act. However, the Act was silent on any specific state agency of where the Innocence Fund shall reside, and our office needs a state agency to actually make a payment from. So in discussion with the Division of Financial Management, our office and the governor's office, it had been recommended that the Innocent Fund reside under the control of the State Board of Examiners Agency Code 442. The reasons for this recommendation stem from the desire to not have to have the Innocence Fund reside with any state law enforcement agency, and because all claims must first be approved by the State Board of Examiners before it can be paid. So this will provide the efficiency of requiring a claimant only having to bring their adjudicated claim to one place for approval and payment. So the Board of Examiners can review the claim and, if approved, authorize it to be paid out of the Innocence Fund. So that's our plan, approach, unless we hear otherwise from the board. Item number 8 is from the Office of the Attorney General. This is their quarterly update to the board report of their special deputy appointments during this 3rd quarter of fiscal year 21. And our last item is the State Insurance Fund, and that concludes our informational agenda.
Mr. Chairman,
General Wasden.
I move adjournment.
And I second. It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Is Secretary Ybarra on yet?
She is.
She is there. Okay.
Superintendent Ibarra is present. Good morning.
Good morning.
You ready, Director?
Sure am.
We'll call the State Land Board to order. For the record, present are myself in person and Controller Wolf, by Zoom, Attorney General Wasden, and Superintendent Ybarra. And the Governor will not be joining us today. Mr. Director.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Land Board members, good morning. This is the regular meeting for the State Board of Land Commissioners for Tuesday, April 20th, 2021. Real quick, given the COVID-19 situation over the past year, we were not able to do our regular onboarding event that we did quite often, where we bring staff that are relatively new to the agency or haven't been through the onboarding process to Boise to sit through a land board meeting. Sometimes the land board meetings are more exciting than others, so it's the luck of the draw for our staff that come down. But we've got 8 folks in the class. If they could all stand up, I think they're all here. And we've got some new faces and some returning folks that left the agency and came back. And but we're glad to have everybody here, and they get to spend the day with us, learn a little bit about the agency. With the session going on, they can witness what's happening over at the State House. And so we're just glad to have them here. So appreciate them all being here.
Well, welcome aboard, and man, it's great to have such a big crowd here. It's almost standing room only.
So, Mr. Chairman and Land Board members, we'll jump into the department report. Tab 1 and attachment A in your binders is the department's timber sale transactions and activities. Last month, the Department of Land sold 1 endowment sale, which the net sale value represented about a 32% upbid over the advertised value. The department also sold 1 Gna sale on the Nez Clear National Forest up north, which was upbid about 47% over the advertised value. The volume of the endowment sale was more than 3.2 million board feet, which netted about $860,000, and an average selling price of $265.02 a thousand. And the Gna sale contained more than 4.4 million board feet, netting about $1.55 million, or $316.54 a thousand. On to the next table. Proposed timber sales for auction. The department is proposing 4 timber sales in our north operations for auction this month. Total sawlog volume in these sales is more than 18.5 million board feet, valued at more than $4.7 million. Additionally, the department recently sold the Rocky Goose ton sale to Wood Grain, which was upbid about 50%. Onto the bottom table, volume under contract as of March 31st, 2021. The department currently has 165 active contracts. Total volume under contract is nearly 555 million board feet, with an estimated residual value of more than $136.3 million. And you can see where we are tracking, and that's actually fairly closely to the 3-year average in the right-hand column there. On to page 2. This next table represents the department's timber harvest receipts to date so far this fiscal year at more than $70 million. March stumpage and interest brought in about $7.1 million, while April is projected to bring in almost $2 million. The next table is a status update of our FY 2021 timber sale program. The department has either sold or has in process more than 249 million board feet of sawlog volume, which represents about 88% of the total FY 2021 sales volume. And as you can see, on the cedar pole category, the department has exceeded our sale target here several months ago. And I know David Greenwood in our Timber Management Bureau will be providing a quick update on the cedar pole program. Onto the graphs. The bottom graph on page 2 shows our cumulative harvest receipts, and you can see where we've landed, which is right in the middle of the projected range where we can expect revenue to be by the end of the fiscal year. Current fiscal year to date is about 116% of the 3-year average. Moving on to page 3, and to the top graph, cumulative harvest volume. Current fiscal year to date is about 124% of the 3-year average. The increase in harvest can be attributed to recent salvage sales and harvesting of older timber sales, but as you can see, with spring breakup occurring, harvesting has leveled off quite a bit. The bottom graph on page 3 is our monthly lumber and stumpage price index. Again, the green line represents the market lumber price, and the blue line represents the ideal 6-month rolling average for stumpage price. And then the red line represents the ideal monthly stumpage price trend, which we recently added several months ago. As you know, stumpage prices vary based on the quality of the individual sale, influenced by factors like haul distance, harvesting systems, volume per acre, and species composition of the sale. And you can see lumber prices continue to climb, driven by demand in housing and remodeling, but given the variability in our sales, stumpage is slow to respond. This is something we've been talking about for quite some time. However, I will point out that at this time last year, the 3-year average for stumpage was below $200 a thousand, while the current 6-month average is now about $255 a thousand. So we're above where we were last year at this time. The table on page 4 is the timber sale aging report that was first discussed in January, which this will now be presented annually in April along with our timber sales plan. This table gives you an idea of the percent volume under contract and the number of active sales going back to FY16. As you know, most of our sales have a 2 to 5 year harvest window in which the department begins charging interest from the date of sale at 6% per year until the sale is complete. As you can see, the majority of our sales are grouped into fiscal years 19, 20, and 21. And then the map on page 5 just gives you an idea of our sold and proposed timber sales and where those will take place. Mr. Chairman, Land Board members, before I move on to attachment B, I'd be happy to stand for any questions.
Any questions for the director? I think we're ready to move on.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, turning to page 1 of attachment B, this is your endowment transactions, including leasing, permits, and real estate revenue within the Trust Land Management Division. In March, the department issued a total of 18 instruments, 12 of which were land use permits. Only one real estate transaction took place in the month of March, which was a deed granted to Bonner County for road use. And just a quick update on land exchanges. The Waihe Land Exchange, the department is working with the BLM on closing this process. This has taken quite some time to get here, but we're hopeful over the next several months we'll be able to bring this project to completion. The Avamore Exchange, the property is in the appraisal process. Idaho Forest Group Land Exchange, due diligence is complete, and the plan is to bring this particular exchange to the Land Board in May. The Diatley Land Exchange, the department is actually waiting on the due diligence at this current time. And then the Eastern Idaho Solid Waste Land Exchange, again, the department is waiting on due diligence for this exchange as well. On to page 2, which is our monthly fiscal year to date gross revenue for leasing activities within the Trust Land Management Division. Again, this is for both actual and forecasted receipts through March 31st, 2021. We are still tracking ahead of revenue expected at this time of year. Total revenue with real estate services income combined for so far this fiscal year is nearly $4.6 million. And we are on pace to reach that $6.1 million mark that we forecasted. Just a couple of things to point out. As I mentioned last month, 10 new communication sites were completed this fiscal year that were not included in the forecast that was developed last June. So you can see the delta between the expected and actual receipts depicted on the table. And regarding grazing leases, invoices go out to our lessees in mid-March and payments are due on May 1st. Most revenue comes in April and May, so there has been a significant uptick in the revenue in this category since last reported. On to page 3, cumulative trust land program receipts. This is without timber. This graph shows how we compare against the 3-year average for receipts, which is about 84% of the 3-year average. While we are on track to meet our fiscal year-end goals, we still lag behind the 3-year average, largely given declines in residential and cottage site income, as well as a steady decline in grazing revenue. However, at nearly $4.6 million in income, we have exceeded our expected revenue for the month of March. And then on to page 4. This is a status update of our permanent fund revenue and royalties from the sale of minerals such as sand and gravel, phosphates, and other minerals. The amount to date this fiscal year that has been deposited into the permanent fund is about $1.5 million, which is close to the 3-year average, as you can see. Mr. Chairman and Land Board members, I will stop here for questions.
Any questions for the director?
And one thing I failed to mention, Mr. Chairman, is that before I leave, our real estate, our trust lands revenue and real estate revenue, I'd like to point out that Josh Perkis, if he could stand up, is our new Real Estate Services Bureau Chief. We recently just tapped Josh and pulled him into that position, I believe, last week. So we look forward to working with Josh, and we know he's the right man for the job. So. On to attachment C, Mr. Chairman. This is a quick legislative update. You can see there's a number of things that the department tracked this legislative session. The one I'd like to point out is our appropriations bill, which is House Bill 324. I'm sorry, Senate Bill 1160. 324 is the EFIB budget, which also passed. But our budget for the Department of Lands passed last week. 46 to 22 in the House, with 2 absent. And before the break of the legislature, the Senate passed 35 to 0. And then, Mr. Chairman, on to attachment D. This is our land bank aging report. The current amount in the land bank fund right now is just over $143 million. There were no deposits into the land bank in the third quarter. Just the additive income is just all due to interest coming into the fund. So with that, Mr. Chairman and Land Board members, I will stand for any further questions.
Any questions for the director? You're getting off easy.
I guess so. Okay, Mr. Chairman, on to
Continue.
tab 2, the Endowment Fund Investment Board report. Chris Anton is online here, and I will kick it to him.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Land Board. The $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan Act, a significant decline in COVID-19 infections, and the accelerating rollout of the vaccine have all given investors confidence that the economy will continue to improve and gain strength in the month ahead. As a result of this optimism, we saw gains in the portfolio. For the month of March, the portfolio was up 1.6%, and fiscal year to date, we're up 22.4%. Through yesterday, the close of the markets yesterday, we were up 26.2%. So we're having a great year. Even at the end of March, we were up over $500 million, and the endowment fund balance is very close to $3 billion today. Greater optimism about the strong rebound in global economic growth has heightened inflation fears, which has driven up global bond yields and caused some challenges for equities, particularly those in growth and technology companies whose valuations are really tied to low interest rates. But overall equity performance continues to be very strong. But under the surface, there's a lot of dynamics taking place. There was a big rotation away from growth and technology that really led us out of the quarantine period last March. And now the equity markets have really been rotating into some of the value stocks, particularly those in financials, energy, and retail sectors. To give you a flavor for the rotation, during the month of March, our large cap manager, Sands, was down 4.9%, whereas our 2 large cap value managers, LSB and Boston Partners, were up 7.7%. So we're starting to see, really change in which companies are starting to perform better in the market. As a result of the inflation fears that I mentioned earlier, fixed income was down about 0.8% during the month as interest rates continue to climb, which left us near break-even fiscal year to date. Since the end of March, we've seen interest rates stabilize a bit. The yield on the 10-year Treasury is about 1.6, and it's slightly below that today. So we've seen the interest rates start to stabilize. which I think has been a positive thing, certainly for fixed income. So overall, fiscal year to date, we're having a great year. In terms of our reserves, I think you all are aware that our target reserves are 6 years for public schools and 7 years for all of the other endowments. As of the end of March, we had 7.1 years of reserves for public schools and between 7.8 and 9.6 years for all the other endowments. Essentially, we have about 1 year of extra reserves for all the endowments on average. So we're in a very healthy spot. There haven't been any significant actions from our board recently. We did hold a compensation committee meeting on April 7th. On May 6th, we have a land board audit committee meeting to review the audit plan and schedule for both EFIB and the agreed upon procedures for the Department of Lands. And then our next board meeting is May 18th. That's a quick overview. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Antone?
Mr. Chairman.
General Wasden.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chris, for your good hard work and the great report. My question is about our reserves. We're at about the right level. I guess my question would be, are we too high? Are we not, are we retaining too much in terms of the balance between that reserve fund and the monies available? So I'm just asking if we should look at that, or are we at the right spot and okay with where we are? Do you understand my question?
Yes, sir. Mr. Chairman, Attorney General Wasden. So I think the target reserves reflect, two important variables. One is the volatility we can see in the financial assets. The other is the volatility in the timber revenue. Because the public schools have a broader base of timber, it's a lot larger portion of the land. There's less volatility, and that's the rationale for why public schools are set at 6 years, and all the others are set at 7 years. We, as you know, every November, once we're through fiscal year end, we do reserve whether or not we have any excess reserves relative to our targets. And at that point, the land board has provided the opportunity with either retaining those or moving those back into the permanent portion of the endowment fund, which we've done historically. Whether we have excess, I think they're reasonable given the volatility in the markets that we may experience over time. I mean, right now the markets feel fairly stable, but historically we've had considerable volatility, and I expect that will continue in the future. So I think they're reasonable. We are at a place where we could consider even bringing public schools to 7 years, so they're all at 7 years, and do that without a lot of pain. Normally it would be difficult. It would take many years to get to that level. So I guess to answer your question, I think they're reasonable. I think we have a process for reviewing those annually with the land board. And I just feel fortunate that because of the big run we've had right now, we have about a year extra.
Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Land Board, on to the consent agenda. There's only one item at tab 3. That's the approval of the draft minutes from the March 16th, 2021 regular meeting.
Mr. Chairman.
General Wasden.
Adoption and approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The ayes have it, and the consent agenda is approved. Director.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, on to the regular agenda items. And the agenda item that we all look forward to in April, right? The annual timber sales plan. This is for FY 2022. We've got David Greenwood, who is our bureau chief out of Coeur d'Alene for timber management. So I'll kick it to David to present.
Welcome, David.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the Land Board. For the record, my name is David Greenwood, Forest Management Bureau Chief. I'm here to present the FY 22 sales plan. This plan can be seen in attachment 1 in your packet. There are a total of 71 timber sales for a total of 320 million board feet that we're offering for sale. As has been seen in recent years, Plan levels on individual areas may vary if the need arises to salvage timber sales on a statewide basis. A couple of items of note in the sales plan, as mentioned by the director, the plan includes offering 20,200 poles for sale. As a reminder, FY21 was the last year of the Cedar sale pilot program. However, the department will continue to sell approximately 20,000 poles in the upcoming years. These will primarily be sold as Cedar sales using the single entry method. These Cedar sales will be continued to be used by the department to attract multiple bidders to the table for a competitive product. Another item of note in the sales plan is the department will offer their first delivered product for sale. This is under the Priest Lake area under the name of Middle Forks DP. The area will continue to finish up the timber sale cruise this summer and all other field setup. We are currently working on a contract for the harvesting operation, along with the timber sale contract for the sorts that will be offered for this sale. Next, I want to direct you to attachment 3. This is the volume offered for sale and published in the sales plan. It has been steadily increasing since 2009 based upon harvest level objectives in the 2009 Forest Asset Management Plan and the most recent 2019 Forest Asset Management Plan. We will ramp up to our peak of 328 million board feet offered for sale in fiscal year 24. At that time, we will conduct another Forest Asset Management Plan and analyze our inventory, growth rates, and project harvest levels again. For every year shown in the graph, the volume of sales offered exceeds our timber sales plan. For the remainder of the current fiscal year 2021, this trend will continue, and we have 8 sales left to sell for approximately 39 million board feet. This is approximately 4.5 million board feet over the sales plan. This can be mainly attributed to the salvage sales that are occurring from the Woodhead fire. I am extremely pleased with our staff setting up, reviewing, and approving these sales in a timely manner to capture the value. We received 3 comments in the form of letters from our industry partners in favor of our proposed plan. Those can be seen in attachment 4. Attachment 5 is the Gna Sales Plan. The Gna sales program is scheduled to auction 15.5 million board feet of timber on 4 national forests. It is the agency's recommendation to move forward with the sales plan as presented today. And at this time, I'd be happy to answer any questions the board may have.
Any questions for Mr. Greenwood?
Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Greenwood, Secretary, and thank you for the update on the 2022 timber sales plan. I guess maybe if you could update just a little bit more on the Cedar poles plan. You touched a little bit about that, but how much longer will that continue on, the actual pilot program? We've done that the last couple of years. Has that been working well? If you could maybe just touch on that a little bit.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Land Board, thanks, Controller Wolf. So we started the Cedar sale pilot program. It was going to be a 2-year program. We did some analysis and then revised it into another 2 years. We are going to continue to use the Cedar sale designation for selling the majority of our poles, as Land Board policy is to sell 20,000 poles on an annual basis. And so what we've seen first 4 years when we look at the auctions, the Cedar sale pilot program included both a single entry and a dual entry method, if you remember. And so prices to date have shown that the Cedar sale average price is similar between the single entry and dual entry methods. The non-Cedar sale price is slightly higher on dual entries. As has been commented on that graph that everyone loves, you know, there's many factors that go into, of course, the price per thousand. So many of our single entry methods that we've been using have had higher logging costs, such as helicopter logging on 2 sales, and higher haul distance to the mill, which has drug those prices down a little bit. One of the dual entry methods had a non-saw log price of $920 a thousand, and that was about $550 a thousand higher than the next closest price. So weighing all those effects, We're still going to provide the Cedar sales as a method to attract future bidders, as we have seen a benefit to increase the amount of bidding on those sales.
Great. Thank you.
Any further questions?
Okay,
Thank you, Mr. Green.
Mr.
you.
Chairman, on to tab 5 in your binders. This is the approval of the Hells Gulch
Mr. Chairman, is that actual board action that we need to take action on? And approve the plan?
Mr. Chairman,
I
the,
think Jim wants us to, or some of you guys may want us
so,
to. Or,
so this is a clear cut that's over 100 acres.
no, the actual timber sales for 22, we need to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm jumping ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, if I'd move that we direct the department to proceed with implementation of the fiscal year 22 timber sales plan.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we direct the department to move ahead with the timber sale plan. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the department is directed to move forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry about that. I was still on
That's
the
fine.
consent agenda in my mind for some reason. So tab 5 in your binder, this is the approval of the, seeking approval of the Hells Gulch FY22 timber sale. This is a clear cut that is over 100 acres, and so this policy requires us to bring this to the board for approval. So Jim Elvin is here to present on this topic.
Mr. Elvin.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the land board, members of the land board. For the record, my name is Jim Elvin, Trust Land Division Administrator for the department. Before you, you have the Hells Gulch timber sale, which has a clear-cut harvest unit of over 100 acres, which requires board approval, according to the December 15th land board meeting of December 2015. This sale and state ownership are primarily adjacent to Bureau of Indian Affairs ownership. The immediately adjacent ownership has not been harvested. However, industrial lands nearby have had active timber management occur. The lands the department manages have had one minimal harvest occur in the 1950s. The nearest town is St. Mary's, and it is 5 air miles to the southwest from the sale area. This can be seen in attachments 1 and 2. The proposed clear-cut unit meeting the above criteria for land board approval on this sale is 178 acres. The clear-cut unit is characterized by highly defective grand fir and western red cedar. The preferred cereal species present on the site have poor crowns and are not expected to provide enough cones and seed for natural regeneration. The log hauling access road crosses over 5 different landowners. We acquired permanent easement over 1 landowner. However, we were only able to acquire temporary access for this sale on the other 4 landowners. The uncertainty of future access creates a risk if harvests were scheduled to occur over multiple timber sales, such as a shelterwood alternative, at this time followed up by an overstory removal. The sale has been prepared to meet or exceed the Forest Practices Act. The proposed clear-cut harvest unit is silviculturally and economically justified, and that's included in attachment 3, some backing documents for that. And it was approved by the Timber Management Bureau, and that approval is found in attachment 4. The sale as proposed meets the objective of the St. Joe Area Forest Asset Management Plan, and it is the agency's recommendation to move forward with the Hells Gulch timber sale as presented today. At this time, I'd be happy to answer any further questions.
Any questions for Mr. Elvin?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the Hells Gulch timber sale as recommended by the department.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the timber sale recommended by the department and the Hells Gulch.
Hells Gulch, yes, sir.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Nay. The ayes have it, and it is approved.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, tab 6 in your binders. We're going to keep Jim Elvin up here to present on the Rocky Point timber sale. This was a timber sale that was approved through the FY21 timber sales plan last year by the land board. And I'll let Jim present this particular sale, had some comments on it, so that's why we're bringing it back to the board for discussion. So if it's all right with you, I will pass it on to Jim.
Mr. Elvin.
Again, good morning, Mr. Chairman and Land Board. For the record, again, my name is Jim Elvin, Trust Land Division Administrator. Before you, you have the Rocky Point timber sale, which is part of the previously approved FY21 sales plan, and it has been advertised in local papers and the public website since May of 2019. The draft plan was posted to IDL Timber Sale website on February 4th, 2020, and subsequently it was approved by the Land Board in April of 2020. Attachment 1 shows excerpts from the publicly posted notices. No public comments were received in opposition to the sale during this time frame. The Priest Lake Supervisory Area conducted further outreach with neighboring landowners during the sale setup process through both a letter and a follow-up postcard included in Attachment 2. Included within this attachment are also notes from the forester in charge regarding comments and inquiries received from the public through phone calls and office visits, and some emails. Comments varied from support, needing further clarification, wanting buffers, to opposition, and ultimately a land exchange proposal received a few weeks ago. The sale is bordered by private land to the south and former cottage sites to the west and the north that are now privately owned. This is a high productivity site that can easily support rotation ages of 45 to 60 years if managed purely for timber. The pre-sale report, included as Attachment 3, states, "These stands have been falling apart for over 30 years. This timber sale will address the increasing defect, mortality, and poor forest health. Past management decisions were made with great consideration to aesthetics and adjacent neighbors. This area is a highly productive growing site that has been underutilized for timber production." Attachment 4 includes the maps representing the sale and surrounding area with land ownerships. Additionally, in May of 2019, the Timber Management Bureau visited the site with Priest Lake staff and verified that the prescription selected by the forester in charge was correct and that the area should proceed as planned. The silviculture of the sale includes selection within Unit 1, which are unleased lots adjacent to the lake, a shelter wood on 35 acres, and a cedar tree on 143 acres. The stand has a typical conifer mix of North Idaho, but the grand fir and hemlock are between 20 to 25% call for sawlog. Continued delays to harvest could push the stand to pulp sale standards and lower the value of timber further while increasing risk of damage and mortality due to insects, disease, and wildfire. The seed tree unit will be monitored for future planting if natural regeneration does not occur to expected levels within 3 to 5 years of harvest. Further details of the sale is that it will remove an estimated 1.5 million board feet of timber at an appraised price of $335,506, or at a starting rate of $222.34 a thousand. As mentioned before, with the productivity of this site, if it had been treated earlier, we would be at the midpoint or so of the rotation and more likely not dealing with disease and call issues we have today. Like the McCall properties we have been discussing with the board, this property has value over and above that of timberland, but management of the timber asset is needed before it becomes a liability, and we are not able to capture any timber value from it. As such, the sale is silviculturally and economically justified and has been prepared to comply with the Forest Practices Act. The sale has been reviewed by foresters at the supervisory area and the Timber Management Bureau. The department recommends approval of the Rocky Point timber sale as prepared and presented. And with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Elvin?
Mr. Chairman.
Controller.
Mr. Elvin, remind me again of how many trees per acre are done, like for the shelter wood and the seed tree? How many do you leave in that area?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman and Controller Wolf. So on this sale specifically, the shelterwood unit's going to have approximately 15 trees, and the shelterwood's usually 15 to 30, that range. And then the seed tree portion on this sale is 5 to 7, and normally that's about 5 to 15.
Okay, per acre, right?
Per acre.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Elvin. There are a couple of people who are signed up to testify. Under our guidelines, the remarks will be limited to 3 minutes per individual or group representative. First, I would like to call on Jake Weimer, or is it Weimer? Weimer. Please identify yourself and who you represent for the record.
Good morning. My name is Jake Weimer, and I represent JD Lumber, a small family forestry business based out of Priest River. My family also leases a cottage site from IDL adjacent to the proposed timber sale area. So I'm here today in both a professional and a personal capacity. First off, it is obviously well within the state's rights to harvest state timber as the state sees fit. On the other hand, as a neighbor, I would appreciate it if there was not a heavy timber harvest right behind my family's summer cabin. Other adjacent cabin owners have similar opinions. I'm sure you can understand this sentiment just as we can understand IDL's mission and how important generating timber income is for trust beneficiaries. Part of the timber sale is labeled as a shelterwood harvest, but area foresters mentioned they found few desirable leaf trees, so much of the area will actually resemble a light seed tree or even a clear-cut harvest. Either way, the proposed harvest is definitely not a light selective thinning. I'm sure IDL faces public comment every day, and it wouldn't be practical for IDL to change operational plans every time a comment was filed. To seriously engage in a discussion about this timber sale, IDL staff recommended that we come up with a robust alternative proposal. Our guidance from local and regional IDL staff was that the alternative proposal needs to ensure the IDL trust beneficiaries are financially made whole or made better off by changing the timber sale plans. We took that advice. In March, we submitted a JD Lumber land exchange proposal for the non-waterfront portion of the IDL Rocky Point ownership. We believe this proposal achieves all of IDL's stated land exchange criteria and is an exciting opportunity for IDL. The exchange is contingent on the timber on Rocky Point remaining in its current state. If the exchange is successful, we would manage the forest on Rocky Point to reduce disease and fire risk, but since timber income is not our primary objective, we would be able to do this slowly over a number of years, rather than all at once to achieve logging equipment economies of scale and maximum stumpage values. This is not the appropriate forum for further discussion of an exchange, but I do hope our proposal is seriously considered in conjunction with the approval process of the Rocky Point timber sale. We have went through the proper channels and followed the guidance of IDL staff in submitting this land exchange proposal. Throughout the entire process, IDL staff have been very open and helpful. This includes staff from Priest Lake, Coeur d'Alene, and right here in Boise. I just wanted to say thank you for that, and also thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Weimer?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Craig Lee.
Good morning, and thanks for letting me speak to you today. My name is Craig Lee, and I represent the Rocky Point Forest Park, Inc., which is a nonprofit corporation that was formed to explore alternative plans regarding the proposed timber harvest on Rocky Point. We are supporting the land exchange that JD Lumber has submitted to the IDL regarding the timberlands on Rocky Point. We believe this land exchange will result in the highest and best use of the lands owned by IDL on Rocky Point. JD Lumber's land exchange includes nearly 3 times the timber acreage of Rocky Point. If this exchange is accepted, JD Lumber plans to place Rocky Point in the IDL's Forest Legacy Program. As is noted in the Forest Legacy Program, quote, in order to protect all forest values and the benefits that society derives from forested lands, it is first necessary to maintain those lands as forests. By enrolling Rocky Point in the Forest Legacy Program, the forests on Rocky Point will be managed in a sustainable fashion forever. These exchanged acres are bordered by 400 acres of timber property that has been part of IDL's Forest Stewardship Program for more than 30 years. One of the Forest Legacy Program's objectives is to focus efforts where there is an adjacent forest property of more than 100 acres. This land exchange is a very unique opportunity to increase the income for the endowment program and at the same time increase the land in IDL's Forest Legacy Program. We think that's a big win-win for IDL and the citizens of Idaho. We also understand that the IDL-owned forests on Rocky Point are past due regarding the removal of diseased and dead trees and the reduction of underbrush fuel for fires. These tasks will be part of the sustainable forest management practices that will be employed by J.D. Lumber and also supported by the Rocky Point Forest Park Group. Rocky Point could be an outstanding example of how IDL can optimize both the financial mandates of the endowment program and the social values that forests provide, such as public recreation, scenic, cultural, and historical values. Thanks for your consideration today of an alternative plan for the future of Rocky Point.
Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Lee?
Thank you for being here.
Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments on this? You know, I would say that I haven't seen this proposal, and certainly it seems like it's a little late in the game to be bringing forth a proposal, but is Mr. Elvin, is this a workable program? Like I said, we haven't seen it.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we received their proposal, and it is 3 acres to 1, but we don't feel that the values for timberland, and even at that rate, meet the land value of the Rocky Point parcels, even excluding the shoreline stuff.
Okay, thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
And Mr. Controller.
First of all, I appreciate Mr. Weimer and Mr. Lee coming down and presenting, and the department and their work on this. I feel that the department has done a great job of reaching out to our neighbors, and which I hope will continue to do and be cognizant of that. I appreciate the thoughtful process that Mr. Weimer and Mr. Lee and probably their associates have come up with a plan or a proposal or idea. But given what Mr. Elvin has shared with us and the department's recommendation, I would move that we adopt the department's recommendation to move forward with the Rocky Point timber sale.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the Rocky Point timber sale as prepared and presented. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the timber sale is approved.
Mr. Chairman,
General Wasden.
I just wanted to make mention that I think that the department has done an excellent job in this case, echoing the controller's words, that they've done an excellent job of outreach, extraordinary effort, and I wanted to compliment them and recognize that effort.
Thank you. Director.
Mr. Chairman, from the department, I will say I appreciate that. I feel the same way. I feel that our folks in our timber program have done a good job here. They know best what needs to be done on this piece of ground, and we've seen that. We've seen the information, and the outreach and the coordination with the community has been top notch. So I do appreciate the work that they've done on this. And I appreciate the nod to move forward. And Mr. Chairman, that concludes the agenda for the day.
Mr. Chairman, I move adjournment.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn. All in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. We are adjourned.